Hello, I'm Bob Ganzak, and this is MotivationU the Podcast. Welcome to MotivationU the Podcast. My name is Bob Ganzak. Our guest today is Domingo Hernandez, and we're going to get right into your life story and a lot of interesting things that you've been sharing with me before we start. A couple of things that I want to touch on. First of all, we come to you live every single Thursday, 11 to 12, from Spurrier's Gridiron Grill, this incredible facility at Celebration Point. And when Domingo walked in today, he's just like, wow, this place is incredible. And it is incredible. And the food is incredible. And the people are incredible. And it's just a great place to be. We're inside the coach's podcast room, which I believe if you want to rent this, you can for a private like dinner. It seats probably 5 or 6, I think comfortably 4 or 5 or 6. But if you want to have an intimate type of dinner that is in a room all by yourself, but still in the ambience of Spurrier's Gridiron Grill, you need to talk to them about this room right here, because it's awesome place. And it is so quiet, so quiet. They put special glass in and everything for all of the podcasts that are done. And it's Hyun Peck, one of our graduates from the Dale Carnegie class, who is a sound engineer, not like a sound engineer that works on a board for music, but a person that goes into facilities and makes sure that the sound is perfect for that facility. He did a lot of the work on this room, and it's absolutely wonderful. Anyways, so we do have some Dale Carnegie classes coming up. We have one here in Gainesville starting May 3rd. And you can register at jacksonville.dalecarnegie.com. That's jacksonville.dalecarnegie.com. Register for that. Please, we have places open in that. We have one coming up in Lake City that we're working on. I'm going to add another one to Jacksonville later today, I think it's going to start June 16th, a Thursday in Jacksonville. I believe that is the date for that one. So come join us, Dale Carnegie classes, sign up, life-changing experience. So my guest today, Domingo Hernandez. Welcome to the program, Domingo.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation. Glad to be here.
I am so excited to be here. This is going to be a journey. You and I are going to start at the beginning and kind of go to the end. The premise of the entire program is leadership. So we'll mix in some leadership as we go through. I'm one of those individuals that think you have great leaders living next door to you. You don't have to be a Musk or a Gates or a Buffett in order to be a great leader. That great leaders are all around us if we just look at what they're doing and the impact that they're having on their community. People like Freddie Wiebe. Freddie's awesome. You know, your friend Frank. Who was on this show just a few weeks ago. An awesome person. So welcome, Domingo. Where did life start for Domingo Hernandez?
Well, I was born in Cuba. I was born in Pinar del Rio, Cuba. And back in 1957, I was born. And in 1964, my parents realized that the Castro regime was changing the homeland. So it was time to move on. And like many Cubans, they fled and came to America to be part of the American dream. They were expecting that it was going to be a temporary thing, that they were going to go back to their homeland. But it's been 63 years and things have not improved a bit.
So you're a youngster.
Yes, sir.
I got a couple of years on you. So I was born in 55.
Okay.
Well,
you were born free.
Yes. Yes, I was very fortunate for that. Detroit, Michigan.
A blessing.
Yes, very much. What was your father's occupation, your mother's occupation? What were they doing in Cuba? And when they came to America, how did that change and how did it impact you as a youngster?
Okay. My father in Cuba was one of 9 brothers and sisters, and they all had their different businesses. If you recall back in the day, a large family like that could not afford to send every one of their sons or daughters to school. So a couple of my uncles and aunts went to the University of Havana. My father was not. He quit school and he went on his own, and he owned a hardware store in town. So when the regime took over, he lost everything. His business, his home, his freedom. So it was time to move on. We left Cuba in '64, went to Mexico for 3 months because Mexico had diplomatic relations with Cuba at the time.
Okay.
So we were in a holding pattern until we were able to travel into the United States as political refugees. And we came legally, stayed in Miami for about a month, and continued on to Puerto Rico, the shining star of the Caribbean.
Yes.
Because my brother had a sister that had left right in 1959 with her husband, who was a graduate from the University of Havana. Some of his contemporaries had gone to Puerto Rico, established an engineering firm, and they were doing very well. So he followed their footsteps. So we arrived over there, and within a week, my father went looking for a job, and he ended up working for a gentleman that later on handed down the business because he wanted to retire. So I'm forever grateful to the people of Puerto Rico for how they welcomed the Cubans at that time with open arms, and very similar. The language was similar, the culture was similar, the topography. So it was like somewhat easier transition
to move into
that island. Yes, sir.
How long did you live in Puerto Rico?
I grew up in Puerto Rico. I lived over there for 23 years of my life. Went through the University of Puerto Rico, graduated from there, then joined the Air Force and did a stint on the Air Force Reserve and Air National Guard. And after 11 years, I was working at the Air National Guard as a full-time employee and active on a Guard Air Force Reserve unit. And Vice President Bush went to Puerto Rico at the time, campaigning for Ronald Reagan's re-election. And I met the Secret Service agents that went over there to do the advance because I was in charge of security of the air base. And they kind of recruit me. So I put in my application, and 18 months later, I was hired by the Secret Service and started in Miami, and stayed with the service for 27 years until I retired in Miami.
Wow.
So, I went from the island to the mainland, and, Miami, the gateway of Latin America. And in light of the fact that I was born and raised as a native Spanish speaker, it made my life easier when I was traveling throughout Latin America, because the Miami Field Office was responsible for all Latin America and the Caribbean for the United States Secret Service.
So you were in the Air National Reserve when you met the Secret Service, because
Yes,
not everybody gets to meet the Secret Service.
Nope.
You had to be doing something that interacted with them.
Yeah, I was the officer in charge of the security of the air base, because if you remember back in time, it was on the early 80s that the macheteros, a group of terrorists, attacked the air base over there and destroyed some of the aircraft that were on the air base, because back in the day, they were not fenced in, or the security was not heightened like it is nowadays. So after that incident, they beefed up the security of the air base, and they ramped up the air police or the police force that guard the base. And when they were looking for someone, young person that was willing to put the long hours, I raised my hand, and my commanding officer gave me a vote of confidence, and I did that for a little over a year until the Secret Service show up, and then they invite me to join their team.
What was that like, Domingo? What was the transition like to go from being in the Air National Reserve to being the Secret Service, which many of us look at that as the elite of the elite.
The military, and I'm a firm believer that everyone should serve at least a few years in the military. Military will give you a strong foundation, like you were talking about the Carnegie Foundation. I mean, that will give you a sense of leadership, work ethics, responsibility, patriotism that you need to go on in life and be successful. And when I made the transition to the Secret Service, I realized, it's going to be a little different line of business because you are more covert and you're doing criminal work at that time. But at the same time, it's the same code of ethics. It's honor, it's courage, it's integrity. You respect every one of your peers and you treat your peers as your own family. And at the same time, your life depends on them. So it's
all the time.
It's a team effort constantly. So, but it was a wonderful experience. I mean, I probably was kind of unique because at a young age, in light of my language skills, I was able to work. Back in the day when I was hired by the Secret Service, they didn't send the young guys to do the advances for the president or the vice president. It was always the more mature, more seasoned agents that had many years of experience. But they had to do a trade-off over there because when we were traveling to Latin America or Spanish-speaking countries in the Caribbean, if you have the ability to communicate, you have more chances to be successful. So,
did you get any of those details with the president or the vice president?
I did a lot of advances for the presidents and vice presidents. And also during 1992, when President Bush was in office, remember back in '89, he declared the war on drugs against the Colombian cartels. So there were threats against the families. And later on, they established detail on the family, on his children. And Jeb Bush, a former governor of Florida, he was living in Miami as a businessman. So we were detailed to cover Jeb and the children. So, one time when I met my wife, we started dating and she asked me, "What do you do?" And I says, "I'm a babysitter with a gun." And I said, "How come?" He said, "Well, I take care of some children." And in fact, we used to drive them to school. We'd pick them up, take them to, baseball or football or whatever the sport they were involved in their practices. And, 24/7, we were around them. And it was one of those experiences that, you tell people and they really think that you're pulling a
fast one on them.
Yes.
What was the connection like with them? Did you become like Uncle Domingo?
Well, by virtue of your job, you don't want to fraternize with a protectee. We refer to them as protectees. You have to have an amiable relationship, but always professional. You have to draw that fine line. And it's sometimes very difficult because, you see them as children. Like they could be your own, and you see them doing something, and it's like, well, should I say something or should I bite my tongue? And sometimes you have to use your good judgment and common sense, which is not that common anymore. But, and just try to do your best and, keep them safe. That's the key of the mission is to safeguard the integrity of that family.
If you look at it from the child's point of view, though, a little one going to grade school or football practice, or they're not mature enough to understand what the world is about and what their role is in it. They interact with their friends. They had to look at you like, just like somebody that's always there for us.
That novelty wears out. The first couple months, it was a wonderful thing to have, my dad's secretary around to chauffeur me and, take care of me. And if I get in a little bit of trouble, that they're there to back you up. But after a while, they want to be kids and do their own. And,
and you're a hindrance to that.
Indeed. We're a big barrier.
Big barrier. You worked for a number of presidents, or
I started during the Ronald Reagan administration, which was a wonderful time because he was an honorable gentleman and very charismatic, and whatever we were, he was very very well regarded, very professional. Transition into the Bush administration, wonderful, probably the best qualified person for the job at the time. And then we went through the Clinton and Obama, and the
Clinton, Bush,
and Obama. And I retired at the tail end of the Obama administration.
What were some of the differences that you saw in leadership styles over those? That would be five different people. I
will say that during the President Reagan, President Bush, and George W. Bush administration, if you were on time, you were late. Okay, things work like clockwork. There's a sense of professionalism. There's a sense of respect, and there's a sense of patriotism that I did not perceive in other administrations.
Okay, all right, that's fair to say. So those other administrations, would you say they were more relaxed, or?
That's a good way to present it. Okay. Yes, sir.
So the timing and being on time wasn't as important, or how you were dressed, or?
It was not their priority. No. During the Reagan, the transition into the Bush administration, everybody was coat and tie. I remember when I was first sworn in Miami, my boss at the time, who became a mentor and a good friend, his words of wisdom was, perception is everything in life. You project a professional image, and that will get you anywhere. And when we travel throughout Latin America, we always try to lay out the red carpet, because you never know who's the next person that is going to come and be responsible for another visit. So if you do your job right and you do it to the best of your abilities, that next person is going to have a very easy path. But if you burn bridges, he's going to have a rocky road. And we've seen that often. And and what I learned in my days with the Secret Service, we were always welcome. The Secret Service, if I work with the state, with the county, with the federal authority, it don't matter who I was working with. When it was time for a visit, I always managed to get anything that I needed and more, just because the Secret Service had that prestige. It was the supreme law enforcement organization.
That ambiance is just,
yes, sir. And when I went out to school fairs, or like for my daughters, when they were having, bring your father to work, I was able to get a limo out of the garage and bring one of the guys with me and let the kids see the limo and hand out some brochures about the Secret Service. And every one of them was excited, but I want to grow up and be a Secret Service man. Yes. And that was my opportunity to explain to them that, hey, you have to maintain a path in life, because if you do something foolish, that tarnish your criminal record, that's it.
Yep. It's over forever.
You ruin your opportunity because there is zero tolerance. And you have to get your schooling. I mean, you have, no matter what you study, but you have to try to get your schooling and excel, learn everything. Knowledge doesn't take up any space. And I mean, you'd be surprised how many of those kids later on I ran into. And because during my career, I became a polygraph examiner for the United States Secret Service, which by virtue of the language, I mean, there was a friend that he was a polygraph examiner and he was starting to get burned out. He wanted out of the program and he kind of recruited me for obvious reasons. He needed a replacement and I needed to stay in Miami because he was right after Hurricane Andrew had come through Miami and left me with a lot of damage in my home. So I was faced with a dilemma. I had to go to Washington and go into the Presidential Protective Division or Vice Presidential. I had a choice, but I didn't want to at that time. And I told my boss, it's not that I don't want to go, but I can't go now because of what Andrew has done to me. I was responsible for taking care of my mother and my grandmother.
So you had family.
I had family issues.
Destroyed homes and family. And that's interesting. Going back to the presidents, I've always been interested in this. I mean, you get to vote like any other citizen.
Yes, sir.
And I'm sure there are liberal Secret Service agents, and there are conservative Secret Service agents. What is it like when, and I know the standard answer is you're professional, it doesn't matter.
Well,
but you didn't vote for that guy, and now all of a sudden he's like my boss. How does that feel?
You have to be apolitical. I mean, your political affiliation doesn't have anything to do with the job that you're performing. You made an oath of office that you're going to uphold the Constitution of the United States and you're going to protect that person. I mean, I had to protect Fidel Castro in 1995 when he came to the United Nations General Assembly in New York.
Had to be tough for you.
And I sent a note. I mean, I had a supervisor at the time in Miami that he sided with me. And we sent a message to headquarters in Washington saying, hey, this is not prudent or necessary. I mean, there's others that wanted to volunteer. But no, I ended up doing it. And then the gentleman that was in charge of the detail, friend from New York field office, he said, hey, I know, and I don't agree with what they're doing. I'm going to put you in the midnight shift. So that way you stay out of sight. Well, it did not work that well because Fidel was declared by Giuliani, who was mayor of the city of New York at the time, persona non grata. So he couldn't attend most of the venues during the day. So he was going out at night to Harlem or different venues. And there we were.
And you had to go hang out with him.
Yeah, pushing people around. And, hey, then I got calls. And my wife got calls. And said, what is he doing in New York, pushing people around? And, it's kind of because I didn't say anything to anybody. I mean, I had to go and I had to do what I had to was tasked with. But I tried to get some of the Cubans to defect. I mean, I used to go down the street to a Korean deli over there, give the guy a couple more dollars to put a little bit more material into those sandwiches and bring them. But they constantly rotate those guys.
So that you can't get enough time with them to
no, they knew,
influence them.
They knew the day that we arrived over there, they knew that I was Cuban. I mean, it was no secret. I mean, every one of them was probably Cuban intelligence, and they knew. So, my supervisor said, hey, talk about boxing or baseball, but keep the politics off the mat. And so we did, and it was a successful visit after all, but unnecessary. I mean, they could have sent someone else, but, it's like
part of life.
Part of life. Yes, sir.
We are visiting with Domingo Hernandez and talking about his life story. So many interesting things that we're going to get into more. We're coming to you live from Spurrier's Gridiron Grill here at Celebration Point. It's inside the coach's podcast room. What a great facility. And we're just so blessed to be able to look at these helmets and share some things about the history of this facility and kind of the University of Florida, which your daughter is a graduate of.
Yes, sir. Gators.
My daughter is a graduate. Your wife is a graduate?
Yes, sir.
Which is another added bonus. My stepdaughter graduates this weekend, Saturday night. She will become an alumni of the University of Florida.
Gator.
Another Gator. But back to the Secret Service for a moment. A lot of individuals think of the Secret Service and they think of one thing, the presidential detail. When we were out in the lobby talking before the program, you were talking about counterfeit.
Yes, sir.
What are some of the things that you have experienced and that you've done in your Secret Service life outside of protecting people, protecting presidents or vice presidents or visiting people of state?
Short history lesson. The Secret Service was created in 1865 by President Lincoln. Okay. At the time, the Secret Service was created to protect the nation's economy. Right after the war, there were so many banks everywhere, and everybody was producing their own currency. So there was a lot of counterfeiting. So over time, the service became or was initially created under the Department of the Treasury to safeguard the economy of the United States. Over time, currency evolved. In 1902, they created the greenbacks, the currency as we know it now, the U.S. dollar, and standardized the size. And from that point on in history, the Bureau of Engraving and Printing has been printing the money for the United States government. The Secret Service has been responsible, working hand in hand during our tenure in Treasury, and subsequently after we transitioned to Homeland Security in 2003, with the financial institutions. We investigate counterfeit currency, we investigate financial crimes, credit card fraud, electronic fraud, all kinds of different financial crimes. And on top of that, intelligence. The Secret Service does do a lot of research, and because the money was printed in paper back in the day, the Secret Service has a forensic services laboratory in Washington where they have the largest repository of ink of any agency. And every time you do a case, you have counterfeit notes, you send it to them for analysis. But also, whenever some person that is mentally ill writes a note that is going to harm or hurt any of our protectees, that note had to be sent in, and they analyze and see if the person was the one that wrote it. And even when it's done in typewriters and stuff like that, those scientists on the Forensic Services Division had their job cut for by doing all these different analysis. Most of them were chemists or scientists of different types, but they were doing a heck of a job for us in the field, trying to ascertain where the money came from. And how you can tell, because of the paper, because of the inks and different components that were present. But at one point, most of our counterfeit currency here came from Colombia. The Colombians were doing a lot of counterfeit over there because
they have their own scientists, and people are, as you said, it's getting a lot tougher to tell the difference.
Yes, because nowadays is a lot of technology. Back in the day, there were a lot of craftsmen. Colombia as well as Peru, Argentina, those countries, there were a lot of immigrants after the war, World War I, World War II, and they settled shops over there. The lithographic industry was rampant. They published a lot of books and pamphlets and magazines and everything. So the inks, the papers, the knowledge, the ability was there. So, if you come to my little shop that is not doing so well and you ask me to print a few dollars, if the price is right, I might bring a few dollars. It's just another job. But they end up in jail. And some places, the punishment was more harsh than others. We tried until we managed, the Secret Service managed 3 years of negotiation through the Department of Justice to put a stop to the counterfeiting over there, because a lot of the laws in countries like in Colombia, Peru, and others, I mean, if they counterfeit U.S. currency, a foreign currency, it's not a big deal. They counterfeit the national currency, it's a serious crime. So we had to explain to them the severity and the impact of that counterfeiting of foreign currency, because it's affecting their own people. Because you go to the market as a tourist and you have your dollars, you trade your dollars for local currency to buy all the arts and craft and everything, you're defrauding their people. So
Yes. Yeah.
it finally clicked with them, and they realized, wait a minute, it's a crime to counterfeit the national or the foreign currency. I was in a meeting with people from all over Europe and the United States and South America when they were going to launch the euros. And I was with a colleague older than me, more seasoned, and he said, in 3 months, they're going to counterfeit the euros. And I said, are you sure? He says, oh, yeah, in 3 months. A month later, we receive a call from a friend, source, down in Colombia, and said, they're working on a currency here that I never seen. That we're already
The
working
euros.
on the euros. Yeah. It's a challenge. I mean, the counterfeiter is an artist. You present them with a challenge, and they will take you up. And sooner or later, they will come up with a acceptable counterfeit.
Because they don't look at it as counterfeit. They look at it as an art form. You know,
Indeed.
they're replicating something that.
It's a means to make a living.
We're going to take a quick break here, and when we come back, I want to jump and change. We're going to
Yes, sir.
change paths, and we're going to go towards the Florida cracker. And
Yes,
we're
sir.
going to go start talking about cattle drives in the great state of Florida, and talk to us about some of the things that you're doing currently. So this is Motivation You, the podcast. We'll be right back.
Oh my gosh, I can't even believe this. Look what you have done to my truck.
Excuse me, it's your fault, it's not my fault.
Yes, it is your
No,
fault.
it's not, no,
I am
it's not.
calling Jeffrey Meldon from Meldon Law.
So I'm gonna call Jeffrey, my husband.
Meldon Law, this is Jeffrey speaking.
This crazy lady
wait,
here,
honey.
this crazy lady, he might...
New client? Yes, but this one might be a little tricky.
Looking for more reasons to celebrate? We have them here at Celebration Point. Enjoy some of the newest additions to our already celebratory lineup, like Dave & Buster's, Les Macarons, and Prime and Pearl. There's always a reason to celebrate. Join us anytime for any occasion. Celebration Point, where Gators come to celebrate.
Welcome back to Motivation You, the podcast. My name is Bob Ganzak. We're here with Domingo Hernandez, and Domingo shared with us already about his birth being in Cuba and coming to the States via Mexico and Miami and Puerto Rico, and becoming a Secret Service agent, spending
sir.
27 years in the Secret Service, counterfeit, vice presidential detail, different things that you've done. Amazing. Yet there's a whole nother aspect to your world that I find very intriguing, and that is what is going on currently. People might not think of the state of Florida as having cattle drives, but we have a cattle drive coming up here in the state of Florida.
Yes, sir.
Share with us, what is the genesis of this, and how did you get involved?
Okay. Back in 1992, when I was protecting the Jeb Bush family, I ran into a friend of mine that had horses, and he said, "Man, you have some time off. I mean, you need to find a nice hobby over there to keep you occupied." And so I drifted into the horses. I don't know if it was, he did me a favor, but forever, I will remember him forever. In 1995, there was the first cattle drive. We were celebrating the 150th anniversary of the Florida, La Florida as a state. Why the cattle? Because Florida received cattle first than any other state in the United States. During Ponce de Leon's second voyage in 1521, cattle arrived in La Florida. And subsequently, during every other voyage that the Spaniards came here, they brought more cattle, horses, swine, and dogs. And the cattle grew up wild. I mean, Florida, Central Florida, all these different environments here were conducive for that cattle that the Spaniards brought in to proliferate. And they multiplied and became part of the Florida landscape. I mean, and tens of thousands of them. And then the Seminoles came in and became probably the first cattle ranchers here, because remember, back in the 1700s, the Spanish Jesuits and Franciscans, friars, came here with the missions when Spain was in control. And they try to educate the native on the cattle ranching. And probably from that interaction from the Jesuit and Franciscan friars, the Seminoles became cattlemen like they are these days. And they're some of the most powerful cattlemen here in the state of Florida. But in 1995, we did the first cattle drive, the Great Florida Cattle Drive 95. We started in the small town of Kenansville.
Where is that?
Kenansville is west of the Turnpike. If you pass the Jihad Junction exit, I mean, we're a little west of that area. They're south of Kissimmee, St. Cloud, about 20-some miles. We gather over there at the division of the Adams Ranch, which is an old ranching family here in Florida. They were responsible to introducing the Bradford herd. I mean, the Bradford as a registered cattle in the United States. I mean, they had an operation over there, another one in Okeechobee. But we started over there, and with 1,000 head of cattle, we traveled through all different Florida landscape for a period of 1 week with wagons and horses. There were some people that walk, like the old pilgrims used to do, and some were in mules. But
did you stay at the Holiday Inn? Or?
No, sir. No, sir. There was no luxury whatsoever. You stay on the ground and you camp. You bring your tent or you pitch teepee or whatever. And there was no motorized vehicles except for the firemen and the rescue that we had there for support. Mm-hmm. And also the caterers, they had to move and cater the meals along the way. But we started in Kenansville. We ended up in the Silver Spurs Arena, which is now where the Kissimmee Heritage Center is located. Mm-hmm. And
how many miles?
It was 60-some miles, 66, 67 miles at the time, and average of 10 miles a day. And by the time we end up over there, they had a big concert on the arena and all cattle in the arena. I mean, and the Florida crackers, which the term come from the cracking of the cow whip, which is a tool that they use when they're herding cattle. Mm-hmm. They use dogs, the Kurt dog, which is a dog that it's a mix of different breeds, but it has the ability to herd cattle. Because remember, in Florida, it's very swampy, and you have to go out and hunt. That's why they call cow hunters. You have to go and look out and hunt for that cattle, and then the dogs will push them out of some of those prairies or the swampy areas, and with the whip, you kind of drive the cattle after they settle. So in 95, we did the first event, which was a life-changing event for myself and many others. I met a lot of good friends, friends for life, among them the gentleman that I mentioned earlier, Patrick D. Smith, the author of A Land Remembered, because everybody on the trail ride or the cattle drive was talking about this great book about Florida history, that it's about 100 years of Florida history in that one book. And as soon as we got to Kissimmee, I saw this gentleman over there with a book full of a table full of books. And I approached him and asked him about the book. And the gentleman said, "Yes, sir. You want it signed?" I says, "Of course. By who?" He says, "By me." He says, "Who are you?" He says, "I'm the author." So I made a fool of myself, but we became instant friends.
That's good.
Over the years, I bought probably 100 of those books and sent them over to friends in Australia and Germany, England, here in the United States and everywhere. And they all loved that book. But that book gives you a very good overview of what Florida was like back in the day. I mean, it was Florida who produced the cattle that went to Cuba, and it was traded for gold doubloons because Cuba was producing sugarcane, which was a lot more profitable than these Mavericks or feral cattle that was here, but they needed beef. Same deal during the Civil War. Some of these folks were pushing the cattle up north for the Confederate troops to provide the means to feed them.
Keep them.
And Florida, it's been in the cattle industry ever since. We still, to this day, one of the top producers of beef on a hoof. They don't have the big facilities like they have in the Midwest and in North Texas, the feedlots like they have them over there, because we don't produce the amount of grain that they produce in some of those areas. And they have all the facilities to receive the cattle, fatten the cattle, and then send it to the packing houses, and it will come back wrapped in cellophane, and you will eat it at the restaurant like we are. But we did that first cattle drive in '95. Then we did a reunion type cattle drive with only 500 head of cattle in 2006. We did another one in 2016, which is the book that I brought you. And that started as a beautiful event. And then Mother Nature had a challenge to us. And I mean, it rained from Monday night, 1 a.m. to about Thursday morning, nonstop. I mean, we had done the research, and that first week of January, we were supposed to get 0.01% of rain in Florida. But Mother Nature didn't look at the script. And we got about 15 inches of rain. So It was amazing. It was record rainstorm. By the time we finally arrived at the Medina family ranch over there in Kenansville, and Thursday, it looked like a refugee camp. I mean, there were sleeping bags, there were towels, there was all kinds of garment hanging on the fence, and, they have an antenna on the property. And I mean, those stringers from the antenna, I mean, people had hang over there, all kinds of stuff trying to get it dry, because there were some people that quit. He says, "Hey, I'm out of here. I didn't sign in for this."
So when is the next one?
The next one is going to be the first full week of December of this year, from December 4th to December 10th. And we're going to have 1,000 head of cattle because we're celebrating the 500th anniversary. In reality, it was last year. We were trying to do it last December, but in light of the COVID pandemic, we had to postpone everything. So we're going full forward, and we're looking for sponsors and all those interested in roughing it out like the Pilgrims did, back in the day when they established La Florida.
Amazing. So we think of the Wild West. Yet
Florida was like the Wild West.
But this is where it started, right?
Indeed. We had cattle here, and I had that argument with some of my friends in the great Republic of Texas, as well as in Oklahoma. And they keep saying, no, you had it all wrong. So that's why I had to provide them with some documentation that Ponce de Leon landed here in 1521, and he was the one that brought the cattle. We had the cattle here before cattle was introduced in Texas by Coronado later on. So actually, we have the first Pilgrims here. In Florida, the oldest settlement is St. Augustine, 1565. And that's more or less the general area where Ponce de Leon had arrived when he came here and brought the cattle.
I had a friend who's no longer with us, who was a historian also, and he always claimed that the first Thanksgiving actually happened in St. Augustine.
Yes, sir.
And it depended on who won the war to the way the story was told. And because somebody else won the war, they got to tell the story, and it ended up in Plymouth Rock.
Yes, sir.
And yet the real first Indian settler Thanksgiving was held in St. Augustine, according to this gentleman.
And I heard from different sources, somewhat along the same lines, that the first interaction of the conquistadors with the native was here in La Florida.
Yeah.
I mean, it was not up north.
Yeah.
But that part of history is foggy.
Yeah, you get to rewrite it, and whoever has the pen gets to tell what it is.
Yes,
I guess
yes,
is the way that goes. That's fascinating to think of that, because you pick December or January, which tend to be cooler months, which would be beneficial to
yes.
When you think back in time, though,
no such luck.
12 months out of the year, you were in the cattle business,
Yes.
200 years, 150 years ago. And we didn't have air conditioning. We didn't have cooling. We didn't have high-rise buildings that had, it had to be an incredibly difficult occupation.
The native the native Floridians, I mean, the crackers, as we refer to, those that were born here or those that came here from Georgia during that Civil War period. I mean, they were very resilient people. They were, capable of surviving with whatever little they can get from, the environment. And one of the beauties about Florida is that back in the day, you can hunt gators. I mean, you can hunt these wild cows, the mavericks. I mean, so you have different sources of food that you can provide. Plus, the fact that, they started trading as well. I mean, because back in the day, if you have the cattle, you were able to contain that cattle, and you can trade that cattle for something else. Like in the case of Cuba, we were sending the cattle from here, from a natural deep port over there in Punta Rasa, which is near the Sanibel area. I mean, they were shipping that cattle to Cuba. They were trading for Spanish doubloons. I mean, at the time, that was the means of currency.
That was the trade.
Yes, sir. But it was different.
That oppressant heat. I mean, I just
the mosquitoes, the snakes,
the gators.
Gators.
I mean, you were talking about the dogs hurting the cattle, and the cattle's getting near the swamp. I'm sure those gators loved when a stray calf would kind of head down a little bit toward to get a little bit of water, and bye-bye.
Fair game.
But that has to be. I'm just trying to think that through. That had to be an extremely difficult time. Just as the winters were out in Montana and Wyoming,
But you have a very interesting point. I have, through my travels out west, I have met several friends at the cowboy. A stockman is a stockman. It don't matter if you're a gaucho in Argentina, or you're a buckaroo in the northern plains here, or vaquero in California, or cowpuncher in Texas, or cow hunter in Florida. I mean, they're all stockmen. They have thing in common is the passion for the horse and the love of the land. They're the best stewards of the land. I mean, they love family, they love country, they love the land, they love their animals. That's their livelihood. But it's funny because I talked to some of my friends out west that came here when they were younger and cowboy here in Florida. Because Florida has also a reputation for those that are into the bull riding business. Kissimmee produced some of the meanest bulls. And some of those guys came here and they rode bulls, and they stay and did some day work for a while. And it's like one of them was telling me, he says, I don't like Florida. I mean, too wet, too many mosquitoes, too many gators, snakes everywhere. And he said, I'd rather stay out west. And you can blame it. I mean, they were kind of out of their environment, out of their comfort zone. For those that are born and raised here, they don't see anything wrong with it. I mean, on the contrary, you take them as far as north as Atlanta and the temperature drops below 70 degrees. Oh, man, they put a jacket on. It's too cold for them. But it's true. I mean, it's where you are and what you make out of your environment. And the native back in the day, as well as those these days, I mean, they're sturdy people. They're resilient. They're very hard-working people that they have to excel because their family depends on them. And that's a key.
Thinking about leadership, when you're looking at a cattle drive, what are the rankings? Who's in charge?
You have a cow boss. The cow boss is the guy that is making the decisions. I mean, he's the one that is telling you when we're going to start that day, how far we're going to go. He has done the research and gone ahead of time. Like in our case here, Mike Walder, he's a saddle maker from Kenansville. He has been the cow boss on the last 2 drive, and he will be the cow boss on this one. And Mike is a cowboy. I mean, he's been in that area all his life. That's his passion, besides building saddles for others. But it takes a lot of work because, I mean, he has to deal with the Department of Agriculture. He has to deal with the Florida Cattle Ranchers Association and landowners. I mean, we're going to be traveling through
People's property.
We're going to start
over highways.
Well, back in 1995, we crossed over the turnpike, and they had to shut down the traffic for a short period of time. So in case a cow or a horse jump over the overpass, it didn't cause an accident. Now we're staying, the only highway we're going to cross is 441, which has much less traffic. But the rate Florida has grown up, I mean, we're losing about 1,000 acres a month to the development because everybody's moving to Florida looking for the warmer climate and everything. But regardless, I mean, the agricultural is the second largest source of income for the state of Florida. Aside from tourism and the big mouths with the big ears, I mean, Florida has agriculture, Florida has cattle, and Florida has a big horse industry. Right now, they just, I think it's over $100 million in revenue that it produced to the state. The problem that a lot of those ranchers and farmers are facing is that with all this development, how much longer they will be able to hold on to the land. Because when the patriarch or matriarch of a ranching family pass away, I mean...
the next generation doesn't always carry it on at the same level.
Not necessarily, because, I mean, they have to pay inheritance tax. They have to pay all kinds of other debts, and, everything is getting more expensive. And by then, they're probably being educated. They have some kind of a profession, and they have a different outlook in life. So
each generation is different from that standpoint. In the last few minutes we have here, we're visiting with Domingo Hernandez. Fascinating life from Cuba to, I'll call you cattle boss, but
I wish
to be out here on the road. One of the things that you brought to me was this piece of paper. What is a Florida cracker? And you had mentioned to me that that a lot of times people take that as a negative terminology. When you're calling somebody that, you're insulting them. What is we have like 4 minutes to go here. What is the background of what a Florida cracker is?
According to my late friend, Patrick D. Smith, who wrote that note over there, Florida cracker is that native person born here in Florida. And the term cracker comes in from the cracking of the cow whip that they used when they were herding cattle. remember, a lot of those initial settlers came here from up north, Georgia, the Carolinas, and they were looking for a new start. And it was here in Florida. So they took advantage of the opportunity. There was all these feral cattle here, and they made that their livelihood. Mm-hmm. I mean, they became ranchers by necessity. And the way to herd the cattle, the whip, the cow whip, which originally they were made out of buckskin, the hide, the deer hides. Mm-hmm. Nowadays, they're made with, depending on who the maker is, it could be nylon, because not too many people continue to do that old-timey tradition.
The leather
the
whip.
The leather whip, the buckskin whip. But
makes a different sound.
Indeed, and the feel and the way it functions is a little different. But because our environment is so wet here in Florida, mm-hmm. The nylon is very
dries out quicker and
very resilient. I mean, and it stands up to the elements. Mm-hmm. When the cow whip made out of buckskin, you had to constantly condition it and keep it dry, because mm-hmm. I mean the humidity is the enemy.
So the cracking of the whip was the cracker.
Yes, sir. And that was used as a weapon and a tool. I mean, it's a tool because, I mean, you used to direct the cattle. You don't hit the cattle directly with the whip. Just make the noise, which is when that whip popper, the end of the whip breaks the sound barrier, is when it creates that loud bang. But at the same time, if back in the day, I mean, the Civil War was causing a shortage of ammunition and powder and everything, mm-hmm. you can hunt the squirrel with it, or you can kill a snake with it. I mean, if you know what you're doing, you can take the head off a snake with that whip, or try to harvest some fruit off a tree or something. Mm-hmm. So the whip was a very good, very useful tool, still to this day. And it was, if I recall correct, friend Nelson Bailey, he's a judge from West Palm Beach County, once told me that to have a whip longer than 16 and a half foot was illegal according to the statute of the state of Florida, because it was considered a weapon. So, but I normally use a 12 foot. That's big enough to give you distance between you and the cattle if you're working cattle. But 16, I mean, it's a long whip. You need a lot of room.
You have a ranch?
No, sir. But every chance I get invited to go herd cattle with a friend, I take the opportunity, take my horse, and go. And I'm an honorary cracker.
What is your horse's name?
Twinkle.
Twinkle. Awesome. Yeah. I appreciate you being here with us today. The next time, what part of the state do you live in?
I live in the city of Miami.
In Miami. I love Miami.
Little Havana.
So next time when you come here, please let me know you're coming. We'll have you on the show again.
Thank you very much.
I'd love to get an update and so many other things to talk about. Domingo Hernandez.
Thank you.
As I said to Frank, he should write a book about his life. The two of you should write a book together about your lives, because there's so many parallels and yet so many differences.
Well, we are the American dream.
Yeah.
We came to this country, we assimilated and try to do our very best. And, I wish everybody that comes to America will do the same.
You're a wonderful man, and it's been a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Bob Ganzak. For my friend and our producer, Evan Miller, thank you for watching. This has been MotivationU the Podcast.